Welcome in. Happy Friday. A ton to get to as fantasy football, tons of news and notes. No Rodgers, Jordan Love, couple of banged up flex plays. So we'll get the latest news and notes with our guy, Ricky Larson. But we always love talking UFC as well. Three big-time fights on the UFC 268 main card. That's where we'll talk. I'll be watching the entire card, but
yes, sir.
Back to a night pay-per-view, right? Did you watch this past weekend where it was early morning, Glover Teixeira shocking the world? That was crazy.
I did not, but how about Glover Teixeira? How long's he been fighting to get to the top of the hill?
It looked like my dad out there, and he made Jan Blachowicz look like an inferior opponent. It was outstanding.
Yeah, he's been working for so long. It's kind of nice to actually see him finally get to the top of the hill. He's always been somebody that's fun to watch. And, it's kind of weird. Fighting is a little bit different age-wise of when people hit their peak. Yeah. Like football, if you're hitting 40, you're done unless you're Tom Brady.
Yeah, even 30, like mid-30s.
Yeah, and now fighting, guys aren't hitting their peak till like early 30s to close to 40. So kind of interesting to watch that happen. But
yeah. So let's talk about the three fights this weekend that have caught our eye. This fight moved, like I think it was the third to last fight, and now all of a sudden it's kicking off the main card. But Justin Gaichy and Michael Chandler set to do battle, as Gaichy is, I believe I saw about minus 180 as the favorite against Chandler. He's from Mizzou. I've got Mizzou fans like saying, "Oh, Chandler's a guy." I'm not here's Chandler's arc. He comes in and beats Dan Hooker. Dan Hooker got twisted into a pretzel this past weekend in like 10 seconds. Like he's a little bit washed. Gaichy destroys Ferguson, who looks like he's starting to slow down a little bit. And then Khabib does this to people where he just toys with Gaichy. That's his last fight. I think he's going to come back in a big way, but is Chandler a live dog?
So real quick, why that moved to the first fight on the card is because Gaichy, Nami Yunus, and Kamaru Usman are all teammates. Okay. So they wanted a little bit of time in between Gaichy and Rose, because they want to get Rose completely prepared. And why not start the card off with a banger?
Yeah, that's gonna be awesome.
These two guys, I expect this to be a gun-slinging, just haymaker fight. Michael Chandler, I like the guy. He is exciting to watch, as is Justin Gaichy. I think Chandler, though, he's more in the more into his prime, I guess you could say. Yeah. Gaichy's been doing his thing for a long time. I think it's Michael Chandler's time, honestly.
Really?
And if this fight gets a little questionable for him on the feet, he is one hell of a wrestler. Yeah. Can almost take down anybody and control them on the ground. So as much as I think this is going to be a rock'em sock'em fight, if it gets a little questionable, Chandler's going to take it to the ground. And that was a funny thing Gaichy said in the presser yesterday. He said, "We'll see who's a pussy and start shooting for legs."
I imagine this is going to be 3 rounds. I would love to see them go 5, but I think since it's kicking off the card, it's going to be 3. Chandler lost to Charles Oliveira, right, who took the belt or the interim belt, and, hell of a fighter. That's his most recent kind of footage we've seen of him. Yeah, that's going to be a hell of a fight to kick things off. We were talking off air about this Rose Namajunas fight and Zhang Weili. I always mess that up, but
Zhang
Weili. Thank you. The rematch, right? So Rose Namajunas has the kick to the head. They stopped the fight super early. Kind of, that's always, well, not early, but kind of, I always view that as not necessarily a fluke, but hey, if these women went 3 to 5 rounds, what would the outcome been? That's why it is basically a pick 'em fight this go around, but you're liking Rose heading into the octagon?
100%. So the last fight between these two, my girlfriend had never seen either one of these two fight. And I was like, that Zhang Weili is a she's a badass.
Yes.
She's
Yeah.
going to go out there and just tear her up. But let's look at Rose. So she was the champion before. How did she lose the belt? In a freak, like, got slammed on top of her head thing, and she was winning that entire fight.
Yeah.
Then, put her in against Zhang Weili, who is an absolute monster. And let's be honest, she was picking her apart to begin with, and then hits her with that head kick, and she was out on the feet. Before she hit the ground, she was out. When she hit the ground, she came back. I mean, that's how that went. I think it's going to be a great, great fight. But Rose, honestly, people just don't give her the respect that she deserves.
Yeah.
She shouldn't have lost the title in the first place. And, Zhang Weili may have never become champion had Rose not lost that fluke.
To Andrade, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what's interesting is she loses to Andrade, who then Zhang Weili ends up beating and then kind of holding the belt. And so my first fight I saw was the rematch against Andrade where Rose won, but it was like a split decision fight. And then on the other side of things, before the fight against Rose, Zhang Weili had a split decision fight of her own. So it's kind of like, which one's sharpening their tools, into their prime, as we've talked about, or which one's kind of maybe receding. It's interesting. Like basically 105 for Rose right now, 115 for Zhang Weili. Who knows? I'm expecting this to maybe go the distance this time around, as opposed to the fluke first round finish.
Both these girls, I don't see this being a chance of like the first fight. Maybe
they don't want to put them to the judges, right? Good point.
I think these two are gonna bang it out. And Weili, I mean, if you kind of look back to what Joanna Jędrzejczyk looked like in her prime, a very fast, consistent, technical striker, Weili looked exactly like that against Andrade. And, Rose is just an absolute badass. It's just, this is probably going to steal the show, honestly.
Right.
The last time that we had, or the last time I watched where it was a title fight of women in the co-main or whatever, they stole the show from the main event. So,
right. Well, the main event is Kamaru Usman, Colby Covington 2. Usman's never lost in the UFC. Colby obviously is lost to Kamaru. My favorite quote is Usman just yelling in Colby's face, I broke your face. I broke your face. Usman's just the scariest guy ever. There's like racial tensions in between these two. These two guys do not like each other. It's going to be just a vicious fight. Usman, I think, is basically 1-3 favored. Is he going to lose? Is Colby going to stun him, or are we going to kind of see what we saw in round one?
First fight, if you look at the beginning of it, Colby was doing real well. He was, putting together real good combinations, connecting solid. It wasn't up until that third-ish round when Kamaru hit him with a real good shot. He goes back to the corner and is like, dude, my jaw's broken. Yeah. And then later says his jaw's not broken. I mean, whatever. Yeah. But, I think it's a good close fight. But again, it may be like the first fight. Usman could start to get the better of Covington, and Covington could try to take it to the ground. Yeah. Only difference is Kamaru is also an animal on the ground. So, yeah. I mean, it's going to be tough to find anywhere to beat this guy unless it's on the feet and he can catch him with something, stagger him, and then try to take advantage there.
Right. And that's, so again, recent UFC fan alert. When I saw Usman for the first time was the foot stomping against Masvidal. And I was like, okay, but I saw the complete dominance, the control, and I knew Masvidal is a badass. So then the rematch against Masvidal, he gives him a dose of his own medicine and says, I'm going to knock you out. A guy who does not get knocked out. Right. Burns, who's a bad man, tosses him aside. Like, I haven't seen a bad fight from Usman yet. And then Colby, all I've seen was him beat a totally washed Tyron Woodley. That he retired Woodley from the UFC, basically. That was a total mismatch. So I don't know. It's going to be, I'm hoping for a hell of a fight. I know, I mean, just look at this past weekend. Don't ever count out an underdog, right? It's going to be one great main event this weekend.
Yeah. And, Colby Covington's just a shitty person. So I would love to just see him get his face broken again. But
I'm with you.
We'll have to see.
So that will highlight our Saturday evening. Let's get to Sunday. OBJ today released. I saw he's favored to the Raiders. Do you, wherever he goes, do you like him? Obviously we've hated him from the get-go since he put on a Browns uniform, but that is the news of the day.
If he can temper his own, like himself, like he's a poison to locker rooms.
Totally.
I mean, you saw at the end of his Giants career throwing fits, fighting the football net on the sideline, to at the Browns. He wants to make it look like, oh, I'm a better guy now, but has his dad go out and call out Baker Mayfield. I mean, come on. You cause all this drama.
And they just released him. Yeah. I mean,
and I would love to see him go to the Raiders, because then that gives the Broncos a better shot.
Yeah. Like, is he going to, this is 2 locker rooms now that he's going to soil, right? Yeah, it'll be interesting. Davonte Adams back off of COVID, but he's got a different guy throwing to him, Jordan Love. What is the fantasy status this week for both these guys?
Adams is still projected to be that top wide receiver. I mean, under Cooper Kupp, who else, are you going to bet on at that position? But then, I've been looking at possibly even picking up Jordan Love. I've got Herbert in every league, and he's kind of just kicking me in the nuts right now. So, Love's projected somewhere a little above 20, which is actually that's a good projection, especially for your first start.
Oh, yeah.
And the Chiefs, not very good on defense. So I think it could be kind of a shocker game for Jordan Love if, say you had Tom Brady and they're on a bye this week, throw him in. Yeah. Why not? What else do you have to lose? You're not going to get the points that you get out of Brady. So go ahead, and Adams, why not bet on him? It's going to happen.
I ran into this in one of my fantasy leagues, and I had a question asked of it too. Matt Ryan or Teddy Bridgewater this week? Ryan's got the Saints. Teddy B has got Dallas.
Damn.
Yuck.
Yeah. Just don't play a quarterback this week.
Right. Yeah. Don't risk negative points.
I would still have to go Matt Ryan.
Really? I went Teddy B. I don't know. I don't trust Matt Ryan just because he just lost another weapon.
Yeah. I don't know, though. That Dallas secondary scares the hell out of me. I could see Teddy throwing maybe 3 interceptions this week, which those will absolutely kill any score you get. And Ryan, I think his first interception in like 4 weeks was last week. He's been kind of being pretty consistent, and he's been doing it without Ridley anyway. So why not go for him? And honestly, Kyle Pitts and Cordero Patterson look better than anybody that Denver's throwing the ball to right now. So
good point. Yeah. He has been playing bad teams, but Saints worried me a little bit, but either or, I think they're going to be very similar. Let's flip it in that Broncos game. Dak reportedly, according to him, says he's going to be back. Is that a play?
Yeah, if he's playing 100%, you got to put him in. I mean, he's got Amari Cooper, Dalton Schultz, CeeDee Lamb, Tony Pollard, Zeke Elliott. He's got all these people to throw the football to. And, temper your expectations a little bit, because if he is playing, I doubt he's going to be running all that much. It would be kind of silly for him to be running at all with, his situation. But I don't think there's going to be a huge pass rush on him. So he's going to have plenty of time to find open receivers. And this secondary, with all those weapons, you can pick apart any secondary. I mean, look at Brady and the Bucks. They've got all these weapons. It's just who is open that play,
Right.
So I think Dak's going to be a great play this week.
Ricky Larson, Lucky Shots Media, he was talking about on his podcast that he doesn't think McCaffrey's going to go. It might just be a week away. It's still kind of working his way back off of IR, his second stint on IR. That's your latest forecasting here. We're not going to see him against the Pats.
Yeah, I mean, they kind of rushed him off IR the first time, and he immediately almost went back onto the IR. So
killing me.
It's I think they are going to need to be smart Sunday, and hold him out. And I think they will be. And Chuba hasn't been terrible for them. So
he's been solid. Yeah.
They can be like, okay, we'll go ahead, give him another week. He is back at practice. Let him get a couple of practices in and see where that goes.
Titans lose Derrick Henry. What can we expect from Jeremy McNichols? And welcome to the starting role. You get Aaron Donald and possibly Von Miller.
Yeah. He'll have a little bit of help as well with Adrian Peterson being in that backfield.
Right. Good point.
But to expect either one of these running backs to take over any sort of different role than Derrick Henry did, I think is silly to think. You can't replace the monster of a running back, I mean,
who's going to have the edge? It's almost two different styles of playing. McNichols a little bit in the passing game and Peterson in between the tackles.
Depends on how you want to get your 7 fantasy points from them each week. You want to get McNichols receptions, or do you want to get AP's, 15 to 20 carries for 50 yards? I mean, honestly, I don't see either one of them in any different light than the other. Maybe McNichols a little more upside because it is the passing game.
In PPR, sure.
Yeah. But I think this team's going to have to turn more to A.J. Brown, Julio Jones, whoever the hell their tight ends are.
Yeah. I don't know. Is it Anthony Firkser? I don't know.
Firkser's one of them. And then I've seen another guy kind of be in and about. So I think that's where they're going to have to start turning.
Looks like no James Robinson. Can you trust Carlos Hyde? Hey, Ohio State's own, right? Isn't that you're not going to win?
Yeah. You haven't been able to trust Hyde. I mean, he possibly falls into the end zone for a touchdown on the 1 yard line this week, but that would require Jacksonville to actually get there.
They get their one touchdown.
And Buffalo's got the top running defense in all of football. So if Jacksonville's going to move the ball at all, they're going to have to count on Trevor Lawrence, who has a negative touchdown to interception ratio right now. It's just, there's nothing beneficial from playing any Jacksonville Jaguar this week.
Yeah, at least they won that one game in London against the Dolphins. Edmonds and Hopkins banged up again this week. Edmonds actually had a good week. Hopkins, depending on how you viewed it, he had the touchdown, then he got injured again. And it was weird. Like Kingsbury didn't want him on the field, but he was checking himself back into the game by himself. I'm a little bit more worried about Hopkins this week because he was fine and now he's questionable late in the week, which is always a bad sign.
Yeah, I mean, but it's been what we've been seeing all year from him. And he goes out and gets a touchdown just to spite me, but it's just, I think he's going to be fine this week, honestly. And San Francisco's defense, let's not sugarcoat it, they're not all that great either. They allowed Chicago to score 20 points. So it's whatever, but James Conner, I think, actually is going to be the top play for besides, Kyler, because he gets a touchdown every week somehow. We got 2 last week. Yeah. If Edmonds is also limited, that's just going to create more work for Conner and possibly give him more receiving work because that's what Chase Edmonds mostly does is get that receiving work. So think James Conner is actually the sneaky play this week for that game.
Especially with Edmonds coming in questionable again, too. Appreciate it as always, sir. Ricky Larson, Lucky Shots Media. Good stuff this week. We are set for UFC 268 and then another week of glorious NFL football. Appreciate it. We'll talk to you guys next week.
Thank you.